Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the first of our welcome everybody, and welcome to our first live stream here at Academia Sede Sapientiae. I am Alexander Krasik, and I am thrilled to have you along on this journey with me. The purpose of this channel is really a pursuit of knowledge and a motivation for myself to work on different deep dive projects and different studies I have in mind over the years, and just something to help, facilitate that, to give me extra motivation and to serve as an outlet for me being able to, I don't want to say teach because I'm by no means an expert in any of the things I'm studying, but to retell, convey what I'm learning, what I'm reading at the moment, to help really, even in my own sense, just learn it better myself and ingrain it. As it's said, when you teach something, you learn it better. So hopefully that will prove the case with this channel. I really have no expectations for this channel. The whole purpose of it is just for me, basically, and what I just said. So, and also to help me become a better extemporaneous speaker, which is something I've struggled with in the past, and hopefully this channel will help me develop those skills better. So, that being said, that's the main purpose of this channel. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about reflections of a recent trip I had to Italy. And very specifically, I'm going to talk about the Colosseum, what I learned on the tour there to help me better remember it, and to, as I said, become a better speaker. So let's start with reflections of the Colosseum. Obviously, it's a stunning place to visit. You know the history of it, and just to be there and be in this iconic spot, being in this iconic city, this ancient city, knowing all that's happened there, the Roman Empire and everything, and to be there is just kind of jaw-dropping, really. So the Colosseum specifically, obviously, we know from the movie Gladiator and things like that, that various games were carried out there, man versus animals, and it was the entertainment of the time. The Colosseum, the name of it is very interesting because it was actually, if I remember correctly, the Flavian Amphitheater. However, it nearby had been a giant statue. I believe it was called the Colossus. And so over time, it just developed, well, even after the statue was removed, calling the place the Colosseum. One of the most interesting things I learned during the tour was the fact that the gladiators, it was not that dangerous of a job. I think we always think of the gladiators as always being a life or death fight, and that really wasn't the case at all. In fact, most of the fights were not fought to the death. Most of them were just actually refereed, and a referee at some point would come in and stop the fight. Um, the gladiators themselves did not know until they were in the arena whether their match was going to be a life or death match, which is fascinating to think about the psychological element that must have had on them, the night before and leading up to it, especially the night before. How do you sleep not knowing if it's going to be your last day, your last night on Earth? So the death rate obviously was not that high among the gladiators. In fact, most of them that did die were killed due to infection post battle, from their wounds. And when you look at the times, you know you had occupations such as being a Roman soldier that had a significantly higher death rate. I believe the guide said I almost want to say 90%, probably a little bit lower, maybe 80%. It was something else astounding like that, possibly 70%. So I believe I don't know certainly what the death rate for the gladiators was, but I believe it was 20% or lower, if I remember correctly. So, they had a very good outlook, if you will, to as terms of if you were more of a physical man as opposed to going into the Roman army to be a gladiator would have been a better chance of survival. So how did you become a gladiator? Well, there were numerous schools in Rome. I believe there was four main ones, and if you're in the Colosseum, trying to picture how to explain this, but off in if you are near if you're facing the Colosseum from the road going into it, on the opposite end of it, there is some ruins, and those were one of the major gladiator schools right there. Um, I believe there was two gladiator schools for freemen. I want to say there was one for slaves, and I forget what the fourth one was. But you had the four schools, and I believe there were numerous smaller schools as well. But it really was, things never change. Humans are humans, and things. It was very much like a modern sports team, so to speak. The schools would invest in an individual. They would feed you, they would train you, and in return, they would get a portion of the profits from your victories. So it was a long process. I believe it was 2 years before you would even fight in a match, and so they invested this time and this effort into you because you're their athlete, as it were, let's say. And so that kind of goes hand in hand why the death rate was lower. I mean, it wouldn't make sense to invest all this time and money in someone else who's going to die right off the bat if it was always fought to the death. And of course, gambling came into this. I forget if it was state sponsored in the way like how we have the lottery nowadays, but I there was a big element of gambling, obviously, with something like this, and so that plays a role into it too, right? You don't want your favorites to always be dying. Um, what was what was a fascinating takeaway with this was the way that they balanced out strengths and weaknesses between the gladiators. You obviously had classes. I believe there were weight classes as well, but you might have a longer range weapon like a lance, but then that person would have no armor, whereas a gladiator with a shorter sword would have armor to be able to even the odds, as it were, and to make the fights more engaging and more unknown what's going to happen. You don't want to always know that this one class is always going to win and in many ways it's reminiscent of modern video games, class balancing in RPGs, things like that. So they did it back then in Roman times. One of the fascinating things, as I said, was that humans never change, right? We always think maybe we are much different than our predecessors, but gladiators were very much the rock stars of the age. In fact, um, there was a certain time when the trapdoor in the bottom of the arena was introduced into the Colosseum, and animals would come up through this trapdoor. Normally before this, they would come in through a gate. The gladiator would be all ready. Then the first time this happens, the gladiator's waiting for the animal, and no animal to be seen. Then this trapdoor opens, and he comes out from nowhere. And at a certain point, the gladiators themselves, instead of coming in, boy, there was two entrances. I almost want to say the entrance they took was the way of life, if I remember correctly. If you know, as I said at the beginning of this, I am no expert. I am doing this for personal study, personal growth, and trying to serve as a motive for my own studies. And I have no grand expectations of this channel, but if we can have some individuals that, want to make a little bit of a community here in our own individual studies and support each other, I think that'd be great. So if anyone in the comments knows the different names and different facts, or even corrects me, hey, feel free to correct me all you want. I am no expert, and I would love to learn from you. So if I believe it was the way of life was the one that they entered, and I want to say it was the way of victory that they left through. But at a certain point, they stopped using this entrance, and they would come up through the trapdoor. Some of them, so a little rock star motif there, if you will. And as well, something fascinating, they had action figures for various famous gladiators. You could just picture little Roman boys running around with this one or that one, and commercialization was even bigger. I believe they bottled their sweat, whether or not that was really their sweat, or if it was sweat from someone else being, falsely marketed, who knows? But things like that. I believe they also sold their blood, and anything you can think of with modern hero worship, they probably did, and they probably did a lot stranger things than we do even nowadays. Um, but like I said, humans never change, and it's similar back then to nowadays. I'm sure if they could have had, maybe I mean maybe they did have autographs for all we know. That would have been interesting. Um, so let's see, we've talked about that. So um, that's most of my bigger recollections of the Colosseum, learning about the gladiators, learning about I guess we could speak a little bit about how this process worked, right? Why how did you how as a Roman citizen did you get um your ticket to the Colosseum? Well, if I remember correctly, it was a bit of the emperor trying to please the people, right? If the people are happy, you don't have to worry about being overthrown. And so the games had this development where I believe it was every Roman citizen had the ability to see at least one game a year, to attend it once at least. And I'm sure probably the upper echelons got better, maybe like a season ticket type of thing. And then they could trade. Maybe this gladiator is your favorite one, and he's fighting next Wednesday, but you have, tickets for the following month for a gladiator you don't really care about, and trading and probably scalping as well, right? Anything to earn some money, I'm sure existed back then. And so it was very reminiscent of modern um, things like that, where you could get your tickets, you could trade them, and it was the big entertainment of the city for sure. It's such a foreign idea to us nowadays, but it's really not when you think of things like mixed martial arts and boxing. Seeing other men beat up other men is has an allurement, I guess, to the lower passions, right? And for those of us who have done martial arts, I think it's a bit more than that. The chess-like ability, say in jiu-jitsu, is very intriguing. But yeah, so I mean, those are most of my recollections of it. Obviously, sorry about that. For whatever reason, this headset goes off even if it's transmitting. I don't know. I guess if the sound isn't coming through, it just turns off. But yeah, so just a fascinating time, wonderful recollections of being there, spending time with family, my wife there, and my father. One of the cool little factoids is that if you look on the modern gates that are covering the entrances to the Colosseum, you'll see in the bottom left corner of some of them, at least one of them, there's a little tiny what looks like doggy door, and it has a paw on it, and it's for the Colosseum cats that live there. And they're actually microchipped to the Colosseum as their home. So if you get a chance, if you're ever at the Colosseum, be on the lookout for them. Our tour guide pointed out one of them lying basking in the sun, which is wild thought. This cat is living in such an iconic place and just basking in the sun as all these tourists swarm it. So yeah, just a fascinating time, great memories there. This was my father and mine second visit to the Colosseum. Definitely a lot better time. This time we had a better guide, and she did a phenomenal job there at the Forum, at the Palatine Hill. So just this fascinating time there. And it really makes me want to get back into studying ancient Roman history a bit more. I'm much a novice in that, but the primary focus of the channel, I think the first deep dive I'm going to be working on is the Crusades in the Middle Ages. Those two specifically, probably start with the Crusades first. I have a book lined up to start with that, and it'll probably be the type of thing where maybe a quarter of the way through the book, I'll just come on and just start talking and trying to get my thoughts out and just try to remember all that I'm learning, and hopefully get some feedback from any listeners that happen to find this channel, and maybe some book ideas or film ideas or even other channel ideas. So really looking forward to trying this out. And this is I've done other YouTube stuff with various projects I've worked with, but this is my first solo one, so we'll see how it goes. I'll leave you with a wild story about about ancient bathrooms, and this was probably one of the most wild things. It is something I mentioned this not to be gross, but to for us all to appreciate the modern comforts of the current age. So we get towards the end of the tour, and it's quite a long tour. It's hot. You've been drinking water throughout the day, and it comes upon the bathrooms, and she's like, oh, that everyone's favorite part, the bathrooms. I'm like, oh, okay, great, great, we can all use the bathroom now. But no, it was the bathrooms for the actual Colosseum, the ancient bathrooms. And she dove into the question of how did bathrooms work back then. And it was very much a community a community event where I don't even think they had dividers. Everyone just, yeah, not too fun. And then the question of came about, well, what did they use for toilet paper? And that's very interesting. Apparently there was a communal sponge, and this sponge would be used, and I believe there was two basins or a couple basins, one of which had vinegar, another one had running water in it, and that's what would clean it off. And I'm sure by clean it off, it was not very clean indeed, but hopefully the vinegar helped kill some of the bacteria and such. It's when you hear stuff like this and you think of the death rate in bygone ages, it's a wonder it wasn't higher with different things like this. They must have had an incredible immune system from all they went through. It's stuff like this. Now this is a bit more out there in terms of random factoids to learn. But the one of the most interesting things for me about history is the everyday life things like this that you know you don't always think you really ever get taught in school. But these interesting little creature comforts, day-to-day life moments that how people lived back then, how just the tiniest little things, and to compare them to what we have now, I mean, we're just swarming in luxuries compared to these previous ages. So, yeah, so let me know your thoughts. Let me know huh, any fun Rome books, any factoids you have to share. Um, if you enjoyed this at all, obviously this is a pursuit of love for me, to learn better, to study more, to to have fun. But if you feel like you would like to support the channel, I would love to be able to get a better headset than this one that doesn't turn off halfway through the stream, and to get a better background, an actual real background. Recently got married, and so I haven't built out my office, my library yet. So hopefully that'll be coming in the future. But hey, I love coffee, and my wife and I we host what we affectionately call office hours, where we would just go to a local coffee house and just let our friends know, if anyone wants to stop by, we love to chat with them. But if no one does stop by, we're just sitting there reading books. And if we want to just have a private time and not have anyone come over, we call it study hall. So we both are big coffee lovers, and if you would be interested in supporting this channel at all, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/Alexander Krasik. I'll put a link in the show notes at the end of this. But yeah, I mean, coffee, books, studying. I mean, it's a great time, right? Especially modern coffee houses, the way they go. So yeah, so this was fun. I feel like I was a lot less nervous than I thought I'd be, and just talking, and it helps that there was no one actually watching this live. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing if anyone actually finds this, but it'll be cool. And yeah, so yeah, have a great rest of your day. Let me know what you're studying, what your topics of interest are, and I well, I for my first video, I can't neglect the classic YouTube, smash the like button, follow, share, all that jazz, leave a comment. So until next time, let's pursue the truth together, and let's keep on studying, and have a great time with it. So take care, and God bless you.